Good morning, Big Square, road with your morning horn of Z's, your sip of coffee. All right, before we get started, I did an interview with Sean at SGT Report. Great to talk to Sean again. It's called This Feels Like 2008. Sean and I go way back to the gold and silver days. I remember my first interview with Sean. As a matter of fact, it is still posted on YouTube. You can do a search for it. It's right here. It's called After the Crash, and we talked for so long about the Road to Ruta theory. This is February 19th, 2011. 2011. It was 9 years ago that we did, almost 9 years ago that we did this interview. The Road to Ruta theory has not changed all that much in that time. Let me just play you the first part of this. It'll sound very much like I speak today. Check this out. This is 2011.
Are we going to allow the bad guys to take over the United States, the rest of the world? Are we going to have martial law? Are we going to allow them, through our fear, to take over everything and completely control us even more than they do now?
Does that sound familiar? Holy crap. It's been a long time. This is a long battle. Obviously, in the past 9 years, I've discovered a lot more. But most of it just reconfirms the Road to Ruta theory. The theory that there's people behind the scenes, the good guys as I call them, trying to take out these criminal banksters, and is getting really ugly right now. But it was always ugly. It wasn't always ugly. It was ugly since 2000, since I started discovering this stuff, at least 2007. Over the last 100 years, the battle has always been going on behind the scenes. I think the good guys, after 9/11, they decided, bang, that's it. We've had enough. So there we have it, the Road to Ruta theory in a nutshell. So what does that mean? We are going to see a lot more of this. Yesterday, the stock market was down 343 points. Remember that all markets are rigged. So they chose to bring it down, click a mouse, and bring it down to 343, down 343 points. There's going to be a lot more of this. And then it isn't rigged at all times. Like in 2008, they rigged it to a point and then they let go of the rigging and poof, everything collapsed. I think overall it was a 50% drop in the stock market. I expect a lot more this time. If the banks fail, I expect 100% fall in the stock market. But that's the problem is these shares are rehypothecated, meaning there's more than one owner of each share in a stock. And it's sad and depressing, but that's what happens at the DTCC level, the broker-dealer level. They are rehypothecating everything. That's what's going on with the repo market. By the way, the repo market today, again, another bank bailout, $43 billion. I think it was something to that effect. Not as much as yesterday. But remember, the $139 billion is rolling over until October 10th. So yes, I expect to see a lot more of this. I don't know what day they're going to kind of stand back and say, okay, let's see how far it falls, and then we'll catch it. But I think that day is approaching pretty quickly. Right now, the Dow futures, it's before open right now, down 126. Again, they can save it with a click of a mouse, or they can run it down by just backing off, and then we'll get closer to a true fair market value. But it's going to wreck so many people. If you have friends in the stock market, it's too late to tell them. They're going to say, oh, look at it, bullshit. It's not going down. Look how well it's done. Look how shitty you've done in cryptos and gold and silver. And look how well I've done in the stock market. It's all because of rigging. So when the rigging stands back a little, watch for a huge fall, as in big. And here's a great article from Zero Hedge. Global stocks tumble, futures slide to 1 month low as recession fears rise. It's not a recession. We're moving into a collapse, not a recession, not a depression, but a collapse because of the derivative problem. And there you see futures going, all kinds of indicators saying that historically all the triggers for a downturn in the stock market have been there for a while. They're just not allowed to kick in because of the market rigging. And Zero Hedge goes through quite a few of them everywhere. I mean, it's like every kind of metric you can, macro metric you can measure says we're going to have the biggest crash in history because we're in the biggest bubble in history. And I do believe that will be, quote, allowed by the riggers because they want to destroy the whole system. Keep that in mind. And with the derivative problem, that's what's really causing the shakiness behind the scenes. Let's take a quick look. Like I said before, this crash is going to be much like the stock market crash of 2008, except on steroids. It won't be just the housing markets and the credit default swaps. Credit default swaps are pretty much gone. They've gotten rid of it. Was a $50 trillion, 50 billion or 50 trillion? 50 trillion. No, 50 billion. I don't know. It was big. It was 50 trillion. That has pretty much stopped, which is interesting because why would the players in that market? It might be that they're just not offering credit protection anymore. I would assume that everybody would want credit protection at this point in time. I don't know the dynamics of how much, a lot of the big banks wrote that protection thinking, oh, it'll never come to fruition. It would never. Certain entities will never be allowed to fail, the too big to fail thing. So you can write credit default swaps on those entities as long as you want because the Fed or the government's going to come in and save them. But it didn't. It wasn't true. Look what happened to AIG in 2008. So, but now it's bigger and it's different. So it's not going to be credit. It'll probably be housing because I heard housing derivatives are booming again. But it's going to be the bond market, the largest market on planet Earth. The bond market it is so overly derivatized right now. And I think that's where we're going to see it. We're already seeing it in the repos. But keep an eye on that. And it could be anything, truthfully. It could be anything. And watch that video that I did with Sean yesterday. You name the trigger, and it could trigger the derivative meltdown. That's the only thing that can destroy the old system, the derivative meltdown. So looking at 2008, what happened? There was the largest point drop in history in 2008. It fell 777 points, intraday trading on September 29th, 2008. Remember, there was an electronic run on the bank on September 11th, and then September 29th, you had the largest drop. And all it takes is the markets were computer rigged at the time. All it takes is the removal of the rigging, and boom, it's like a lead weight that's been held up by the computer market rigging. Boom, it just drops, and then they got to catch it again. So we'll have one of these days, but there have been two bigger days, although percentage-wise they weren't as big, and that's back in February. I mean, the Dow dropped over 1,000 points. They call it flash crashes because the riggers are trying to say, okay, how much can we let this go? They'll pull off the rigging for a second, it'll flash crash down, and they've got to bring it back up. And they got their banks in there doing the rigging, picking up all the stop loss orders, all that shit. Complete rigamania. But what in 2008, when you look at it, it was like July and March, and everything started going sideways. And then Bear Stearns went down. Now Bear Stearns held the gigantic silver short position. They didn't talk about it. That was what got taken over by J.P. Morgan. That's where J.P. Morgan is now. J.P. Morgan's in the same shape that Bear Stearns was in back in 2008. Bear Stearns went down. Now, will J.P. Morgan go down? I don't know. They've tried to hedge their position. All the criminality, if you watch my live chat yesterday, all about J.P. Morgan criminality, it was instantly defunded, instantly shadow banned. So check that one out. I had there was over 1,000 people watching live at the time. And in the first hour, there's 2,000 views, and then it's just boom. Shadow ban, demonetized, something. We hit something there. So go check that one out. And that was, I think it was called Silver and the J.P. Morgan criminality, which is shocking. You look at all the crimes that company has admitted to over the past 10 years, and it's just shocking that they're allowed to be in business. But that's the world we live in, and I'll get to that in a second. So then AIG went down in September, and then all hell broke loose, and it was required bailout, $700 billion bailout in October. Now this time they're going to come to Congress again. Now Congress can't even agree on anything. And I think it would be up towards $20 trillion bailout that they'll need. They'll actually need more. So they'll take the $20 trillion and then rehypothecate it and leverage it up to $200 trillion and try to make that work. And that might kick the can down the road for 10 or 20 years. But that's the key. It doesn't fix the problem. It does not fix the problem. And I have been literally, I mean, you go back Go back to my early interview with Sean in 2011. I've been trying to figure out a way that they can make a smooth transition, and there's just no way. It just can't be done because it wasn't built to be saved. It was built to be destroyed. That's why they took all the regulation off derivatives in the late 19. Now, my good friend Bitcoin Ben yesterday was talking about how the repo, his guys were telling him that the repo was being used to soak up the derivatives. It is wrong. It's flat wrong. But that's okay. That's okay. If they think they can do that, go for it. But the math doesn't work at all. Ben's take was, okay, they're using the overnight repos and they're actually selling the derivatives to the Fed. But that's not what is being reported. If you want to go by what's being reported, it's each night it's rolled over a new one. So the collateral goes back to, it's all done electronically. They don't like move contracts over. Collateral goes back to the Fed. If you're saying, if Ben's people are saying that this is being done surreptitiously without reporting it, that's a different deal. They would have never had to report any of it, and they wouldn't have if they were going to do that. That's the reality. They wouldn't have reported any of this. They would have done it all behind the scenes, and we wouldn't know a thing. That's not what's happening. So yes, the collateral is going back, and they're redoing it. Now, even if Ben's guy is right, that's how they're going to fix the derivative problem, is by doing these overnight bailouts. The largest one's, I think, 90 million. Let's just say it's 190 billion. Let's say it's $100 billion bailout, okay? And they're going to do that in little chunks so that people don't notice, and they're secretly not going to report it on the Fed's books, not going to report it on the derivative holder books, and they're secretly going to turn that into crypto somehow, or whatever their plan is. Get it off the books of the weak party. At $100 billion, it would take 80 years to get the 2 quadrillion that's out there in derivatives. It would take 80 years. We would be long dead. Our kids' would have to deal with this. Let that sink in for a second. If what Ben's people are telling him is true, which it is not, I don't believe it. They would have done it anyway without telling. They can do this stuff without telling anybody, but that doesn't solve the problem. And you would see the derivative market going down. It is not. It's going up. So I don't think see, and that scares me, because if the plan of the crypto guys and the backed guys and all that was to derivatize the entire market. I mean, derivatize the whole derivative complex comes into to be tokenized. That's like the worst thing ever for cryptos. That's like moving a nuclear bomb from the old system into the new system. It doesn't solve the problem. So I don't think that's happening at all. And his people will all of a sudden have a realization, shit, this won't work. And then they'll say, shit, this won't work. And shit, this won't work. Nothing works except one thing. The only thing that fixes the problem, is the total destruction of the old system. That's the only thing. That's the only way out. And people are saying too many people will die. Too many people, it will cause way too much mass destruction. Let me ask you a question. Since this system has been in place since 1913, how many people have died because of unbacked fiat money, because of free money? You know how easy it is to fight a war because you have free money? It doesn't cost you money to fight a war because you print the money. You want to talk about people dying? World War I, World War II, Korean War, the Vietnam War, every single war on planet Earth. The roots of that war, the duration of that war is 100% due to unbacked fiat money, the banksters behind the scenes, these criminals that control our lives. If money was worth something, the wars would be very short, and most of them wouldn't even start. So how important is it that we get rid of the old system? If you don't want people to die anymore, you destroy that old system. Yeah. People will die in the transition, absolutely, but not the hundreds of millions that have died because of this system that's in place. And hopefully, since they've had over 100 years to plan on this stuff, hopefully it won't be as bad as a lot of people are saying. But that'll take truth and honesty. And I think the good guys, I think it's time. It's time to bring out the truth and honesty. But we'll see. I've been racking my head for a way out of this problem for so long. I can't even tell you how long. 20 years. There's how long. Um, and I've been talking about it for at least 9 years, as you heard from the Sean interview. But there is no smooth transition. It was not built to have a smooth transition. It was built to destroy all the bad deeds of the past. The good guys and the bad guys want that to happen. Now the Democrats want it to happen. And soon Trump will want it to happen to get rid of the Fed. Everybody wants it to happen. And all it takes is a little mouse click at the U.S. Treasury and the Exchange Stabilization Fund. A little tiny mouse click, and it's over. The nightmare of the last 100 years is over. There will be no more 5-year wars, 10-year wars, because wars will be costly. Wars will be real, but they'll be fast and they'll be over with because they're so costly to do because money will have value. That's my take. And here's just a sign that the derivative bubble ain't going anywhere. Here it is, 2007, 2008. Everybody's going, oh my God, it continues to build. And then it was dying off, and everyone's like, oh yeah, we're going to fix this. The derivative problem's going away. And look at the past 3 years. Bang, 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 bang. This is actually, percentage-wise, the second largest jump. 2008, 2009 isn't even over. I expect this thing to be up here by the end of 2009. Judging, look what J.P. Morgan's just diving into the derivatives. Same with all the big banks. Huge jumps in derivative exposure right now. So this before was the largest jump in derivatives, 2007 to 2008, to try to fix the problem with derivatives. The same thing is happening right here. This is only 2 years into 2009, so that would put us right here by the end of the year, right up at the old all-time highs, and the largest jump in derivatives that we've ever seen. Don't believe me? Wait till the end of 2009 and look at the derivatives. No, the derivatives are not going to be squirreled away through the repos. The repos have nothing to do, well, they have something to do with derivatives, but they're not being cleared by derivatives. As a matter of fact, more derivatives are being put on to try to cover for the collateral, the U.S. Treasury bonds that are owned by many, many people. Each individual U.S. bond, every dollar worth, is owned by 2 or 3 of these big banks, and they use them as collateral for all kinds of different. That's the problem behind the scenes. All right, I promised people I would talk about this. I'm kind of torn. This is the Block One SEC settlement for $24 million fine, which obviously is ridiculous, considering they had a $4 billion ICO. And you read through what the SEC said, and I've said, how long have I said? Block One was deep state all the way. All the way. People involved, deep state all the way. It just shows you the deep state's kind of in charge still, especially in the cryptos. So yeah, they got a tiny little pat on the hand, said, how dare you? And that's the other thing. There's so many problems with the SEC filing. The biggest problem is that it was after the Dow letter, after the SEC finally came out and gave some guidance, and Block One broke every rule. Not to mention, they promised an audit and no audit was given. I mean, that's not even mentioned a lot of things are not even mentioned because it's deep state. Now the DOJ is not necessarily in Block One. They're in Bitfinex and Tether, which is the same people. So I think they're going to let the EOS guys run with it. Go for it, guys. EOS is already out there. You can't stop it. Well, you could. You can go to the 21 block producers and say, we're going to arrest you. And nobody would take their place after that. So it's very centralized. But, I don't, this thing with Block One, I don't know. I'm torn between SEC should not be in this stuff at all. SEC should be, they're pathetic, they're ridiculous, and they're bought off, and they're controlled by some very dark creatures. But hey, people say, well, compare this to Veritasium, which the ICO happened before the DAO. It was only a $15 million ICO, and the SEC blocks $8 million of their ICO. If they got the same treatment as Block One, a 1% fee, Reggie Middleton could pay $150,000 and walk away scot free like Block One. You don't think there's no deep state in there? Anyway, no, I think at the end of the day, the U.S. government will need Veritasium. So I don't know if Reggie will be the man, um, but yeah, I'm a big fan of Veritasium coming into all our exchanges and everybody being required to use it because it gets rid of the criminality, the double spend, the rehypothecation, you name it. Anyway, check out Catherine Wu, a lawyer, wrote a great, I think I have it here, a great little analysis on it. You can find it at, let's see, we'll go to this article. You can do a search for Block.one versus SEC, how EOS's parent company got away with a small fine for an unregistered ICO. It's a really interesting article, and then they link Catherine Wu's take. A lawyer went through the whole thing and said, ridiculous, basically. But I don't like regulators. I don't care if it's who they're dealing with. They shouldn't be in there at all, but they are. But they're picking and choosing who they're going to go after. That is so ridiculous. Ultimately, I think this ruling is going to be good for Veritasium because the Veritasium guys could use this and say, you got a double standard here, SEC. What in the hell is going on? It all comes down to the judge, truthfully. And the judge is probably in the SEC's pocket. So they'll do what they're going to do. But there's some good stuff here at the end. And the amazing thing, the SEC, Block One, even admitted to crimes, 4 crimes that they committed, and they still only get a little pat on the hand. And then it says, you work with us. The whole thing about the end was, oh yeah, they're fine because they're working with us. Well, Reggie was working with you for 2 years, and all you did is go in and crush deals he was doing behind the scenes without telling him, including the Jamaican stock market deal, which was gigantic. So yes, the SEC is criminal. This is no surprise at all because they're dealing with criminals on both sides. Eric Voorhees had a good one. By far the most important part of the Block One settlement is that it suggests that a pre-product, pre-launch ERC20 version of the EOS token was a security, but the post-product, post-launch EOS token is not. Now, Veritasium can use that instantly against the criminals at the SEC. I love that. And I mean, that's the other thing with EOS. The post-product is not. What about Ethereum, which you said it was? The SEC's gotten themselves in a little quagmire here of what are the rules. There are no rules around cryptos. They just make them up as they go along. It's ridiculous. Crypto researcher Larry Simek took the dig at the SEC with the op-ed piece titled, quote, "Don't ask for permission, hire good lawyers and then ask for forgiveness." It's not the good lawyers. It's not good lawyers. It's the criminality. It's the deep state behind the scenes. Who's controlling this thing? When you have a criminal dealing with a criminal, you don't need good lawyers. You already got it worked out. And then you got a criminal institution, the SEC, and probably the judge in the Veritasium case, and you got someone who's trying to do something creative and change the world. That's where they clash, and that's why you see this gigantic push to throw Reggie in jail and, oh, you're a fraud, blah, blah, blah. These guys are real frauds. So, yeah, my take is I don't care. I know they're criminals, and the DOJ's in there on Tether and Bitfinex. It's the same people. Yeah, they could arrest them on you name it, a laundry list of crimes that have been committed in the crypto cabal, as I call them. So I don't think it's that big a deal. It just shines. I think it's good for Veritasium because they can use this ruling and and flip it on the SEC and the judge's ear and say, why? Why did they get this and we were working with you for 2 years and all you did was obstruct our development? And yeah, and it was before the Dow ruling, and they even point this out. They even pointed out this. Oh, this was after they broke the law after the ruling. Oh, it's insane. It's insane. All right, I give up on that. But yeah, but don't forget the DOJ. You know, there's the SEC and the CFTC, which are controlled by the big banksters, right? And then there's the DOJ, who once in a while says, "Oh, this is so important, I'm going to come in there." I think the DOJ is going to come after and get the crypto cabal in a different way. I'm hoping. Anyway, on another interesting note, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York has released a Spanish version of the Once Upon a Dime comic book. The introduction of Glix, that would be my character in the Federal Reserve comic books. It's not the one I'm playing music, that's the next one, but I'm sure they'll move on to a Spanish version of that one, and I'll try to get my hands on that one. But here it is. There's the Spanish version of the Once Upon a Dime Fed comic book, and there's Glix right there. I have a tie on, and I'm speaking Spanish down here, which is really cool because I would love to speak Spanish. I speak uh, a little Spanish and a little French. Not enough to get by, shall we say. That's why I love when we go to the Anarchapulco conference, hanging out with Will there and Erica, and they are fluent in Spanish. And we just hang. It's not the only reason I love hanging out with them. But yeah, we can walk around in Mexico and we can order food. We can haggle about the price. Erica does all the haggling. Will does a little bit. I think Erica secretly loves it. Not even secretly. She says she loves it. I'm not a haggler. You'd think being in this business, I'd haggle all the time for everything. Yeah, I'm not. I there's bigger battles to fight. But yeah, I would love to speak Spanish. It's kind of cool. Definitely, they aren't slowing down at the Fed. There's a new comic coming out. They already this one, the history of the Federal Reserve. That's what that says in Spanish. Has already come out, and that's the one Glix has the rock star role. There's a new one after that coming out, and I can't wait for that one. It should be really interesting. Anyway, that's it for this morning. BixWeirRoadToRuta.com. Make sure you like and subscribe to this video and get on the road to Ruta. Go to the Road to Ruta website. If you don't know what this Road to Ruta stuff is, go right here. Discovering the Road to Ruta. We've had so many new people, and it's so hard to start at the beginning. Because everybody says, Bix, all you do is repeat yourself. Well, if I don't, you're not going to get the basis. What about the new people? So all you new people who don't know what I'm talking about, you think I'm crazy, go watch this video, Discovering the Road to Ruta. It walks you through what I discovered in 2007 at the Federal Reserve System, the Grand Canyon Gold, all that stuff. It's so important to understand what's happening right now. All right, I'll talk to you guys later.